20th century poet Marianne Moore wrote a famous poem titled Poetry, which, when published in 1923, was 30 lines long. 44 years later, in her collected works, she had reduced the poem to 3 lines. Poetry. I, too, dislike it. Reading it, however, with a perfect contempt for it, one discovers in it, after all, a place for the genuine. I have spent the last 25 years of my life trying to find a place for the genuine, trying to earn the title of poet. I have published 4 books, been reviewed in the New York Times, and as a professor of poetry, might be considered to have some expertise. Poet, however, is not a profession. There is no management training program, no big poetry firm, no plaque or diploma declares you a poet. You write and revise and write and revise. You hear yourself tell someone else that you are a poet, and then you apologize for it and tell them what else you do. And then at some ineffable moment, you begin to own the word. You make the down payment and take out a lifetime mortgage. You undergo constant rejection, not infrequent suggestions from friends that you try writing a screenplay or a novel. You learn whose great uncle scribbled some verse and you praise him. You learn whose memorized verse in high school and you praise them. And at weddings and funerals, you are very popular, as you should be. You spend a good portion of your days wrestling with small details and big subjects. And at pivotal moments in people's lives, when language is inadequate, words that seem to belong together become a vital necessity. People think of poetry as insular. Writing poetry can be insular. It takes a certain quality of attention. Simone Weil said, "Absolute, unmixed attention is prayer." Historically, poetry has a relationship with prophecy. It's a tall order. Writing poems takes a quiet space, even if that space exists in the corner of a coffee shop with the cappuccino maker grinding beans and an earnest couple talking through their relationship woes in the corner. It requires having a unique lens through which you see the world. We all have it, not just poets. No 2 of us apprehend any one situation in the same way. When we say, "I know exactly what you mean," we are lying, even though we don't intend to. Plato said poets are liars and should be expelled from the city of ideal governance. Plato knew that poets are less concerned with literal truth than the essence of a situation. It's true. We don't really care what happened. We're not even sure what really happened. We have something in common with journalists. We don't trust what we see, what we're told. We generally suspect something else is going on. Poets trust that the details and moments we retain have retained us for a reason. They will not leave us alone. We trust that these small impressions resonate because they somehow matter more than the million other moments that surround them. And we trust that a phrase or image we recall will make its way to another, like atoms that attach and travel together, bonding to form molecules. We know that bits of truth hide in the fringes, in the edges, in the glimpse, the cusp, the seemingly unimportant, in the remnant, the discarded. And truth, when wooed properly, brings along a small dose of wisdom, something we did not know that we knew. No surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader, said Robert Frost. I will spend the rest of my life earning the title poet. You are a young poet until you are very old. Too many poets died young. Keats at 24 of consumption. But he wrote some of the most memorable lines ever penned. Beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. My favorite romantic, however, is Coleridge. He was known as the Friend and wrote a group of poems called the Conversation Poems. Considering they were written in the early 1800s, they sound remarkably like the way we speak today. You may remember him from Rime of the Ancient Mariner, water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Or from Kubla Khan, in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. Poets love the story of Kubla Khan. Supposedly, Coleridge dreamed it all, every word, but his dream was interrupted by a solicitor, known now as the man from Porlock. Coleridge remembered what he could and committed it to paper, but the poem ended up partial. Should we love or hate the man from Porlock? We have the poem because of him, but not the whole poem. Poets make man from Porlock jokes and line break jokes, the way other people joke about light bulbs. Does poetry matter? We argue this endlessly. I don't know if other professions, callings, whatever they are, constantly confront the idea of self-worth, of value. It's not an existential problem. We know we exist. It's not about identity. We know who we are. It cannot be about utility. We don't provide food, clothing, or shelter. It is about making a difference, having some impact, wanting to count. It's insecure business being a poet, except of course it's barely a business at all. Each poem is its own project, makes its own demands, asks for its own form and shape. Each line says, where to breathe, how long to breathe, what should I do in the white space? Have I told too much or not enough? Have I left enough room for the reader? On the other hand, you're surrounded by life rafts with very eloquent people. You know the song from West Side Story? When you're a jet all the way. Sondheim writes in that song, you're never alone, you're never disconnected. I won't sing that part. When you're a poet, you're surrounded by poets, living and dead. They are your community. Your friends, your competitors, your inspiration, your guides. You are on a continuum of poets from Sappho and King David right up to your door. Every poet is Virgil, leading every other poet through the underworld. Every poet's strategies can be yours. Their material can be gleaned and culled, borrowed, amended, and made to inform your experiences and feelings. Archibald MacLeish wrote, a poem should not mean, but be. He meant, don't look for morals, lessons, explanations. William Carlos Williams wrote, no ideas, but in things. He meant, don't rely on abstractions. We understand the phenomenal world, how a plum tastes, the paint on the red wheelbarrow. Keats wrote in a letter, remember letters? About negative capability. In a nutshell, not needing to know and understand everything, the ability to exist in uncertainty. Nonetheless, poems do mean, and ideas do attach to things, and people can only deal with so much uncertainty. When Dylan Thomas writes, do not go gentle into that good night, he is writing about the death of his father. And William's plum in the refrigerator staves off both a fact and an idea, hunger. But to really love a poem involves more than reading and trying to understand its different levels of meaning. The two components of a poem are content and music, the music inherent in language. And the English language contains glorious smatterings of so many languages and continues to expand. You have to listen, and listen hard. I tell my students, if I have taught you how to listen this semester, we have accomplished something. It is so truly hard to listen. When you are, you hear how sounds are in dialogue, in concert with one another, how long it takes to say a long O, or the sinister quality of sibilants, of S's and Z's, how certain words linger on the tongue and others flee. Each poem is made up of units of language: stanza, sentence, line, metrical foot, word, syllable, phoneme, and smaller than that. And each one says to language, stand up, measure up. Poems make demands on the reader. Their conclusions are contingent, conditional, inconclusive. They say to the reader, you're not done yet. I have carried you this far, now you must figure out the rest. The rest of what? The last line of Rilke's famous archaic Torso of Apollo calls out the reader. It says, you must change your life. Does poetry matter? For me, poetry is the antidote to what ails us. It says, the surface is just that. What you think and feel, how you act toward others, the movement of the mind and the workings of the heart matter more than how you look, what you have, and what you have accomplished. A poem can help you slow down and appreciate your world and its denizens. A poem can speed you up, challenge and chastise, invigorate, catalyze. A poem can say, you are not alone in your struggles. It can provide consolation, wonder, perspective, and in such few words. A poem can live on the page without you, but would rather live with you, in the eye, the mouth, the ear, the body. A poem is a key, and once we have the key, we can search for and find the door. In closing, I'd like to read a poem I wrote for and about my mother. It is a poem of mourning, but also a poem of celebration of life, with humor, with references to Jewish rituals surrounding death, with questions, a little bit of Yiddish, and ultimately with a reference to manna, one of the foods that sustained the Israelites for 40 years in the desert, and a reference to a restaurant that's closed, the Rascal House in North Miami Beach, which for a Detroiter like myself, for 2 weeks a year, was paradise. Location, location. So when you go, wherever it is you will go, take the moon with you and make it wear that democratic white shroud, pocketless, since rich and poor we take nothing with us, save a small stick or dowel in the casket so we can all burrow through the earth to the Holy Land when the time is right. Please forgive that I confessed your amusement at Shakespeare's mewling and puking in my eulogy. No one laughed. My delivery was off. But Otto the undertaker smiled. He told me that when I shovel some dirt onto your soft wood box, suggestive of the trees where even Adam hid from the Lord who called, what were they thinking? I should press the shovel back into the pile before the next mourner, my husband, not a Jew, but a fine man, you said once, if 100 times, picks it up because to bury the dead is a mitzvah that should not be diluted. Each person who performs the act should get the credit, which we will need when that miscreant angel comes to collect his chit. Otto dates my second cousin twice removed, and let me say I hope they marry. Someone who guides the bereaved through such a smorgasbord of ritual with Virgilian ease deserves as much happiness as can be gainsaid in the Detroit metropolitan area legally. By the way, Ma, we never recovered your wedding ring and pearls, after some gonif pilfered and pawned them. But trust me, when I find him, I'll shake him till the rich give anonymous charity. Or I'll walk away from trouble the way you taught me to. Otherwise it follows you home and perches near the deli tray without bringing even a cup and saucer. Were you ready, Ma, when your soul and body signed their final confession, the angels acting as scribes? No shomer in Rochester Hills to stave off ill-tempered ghosts, ungrateful relatives, rodents, to watch you until you could don your guf hadak, the celestial garment being fashioned, while your soul went back and forth between homes. I must steal myself, like the egg that hardens when cooked, the egg I salt and bite into, half listening to the rabbi's easeful voice. Together we recite, offering God consolation for his loss. Though I tell my children that you are with God, and they repeat it so blithely, and I am so busy with mourners' occupations, the burying, the tearing, the endless repetitions, double taking every mirror I pass that offers no vision, I start to believe what I want to believe. Your absence here is your presence there, wherever there is. Every piece of land a personal Elysian field, the best room at the Fontainebleau, pied-à-terre with an obstructed view of oblivion, a corner booth at the Rascal House, and the miniature Danish taste like manna, as they always did. Thank you.